Thank you for being here. Can you tell me, how did you get into acting?
I don't know. I have no idea. It sort of went so organic that I played at school. I think at high school I did. Yeah, no, I did. I did stage plays at school, and I kind of liked it. I really enjoy doing it, and it was more or less also because everybody said that I should do that. It was not even so much my own choice.
Right.
And then it sort of went on. I lived abroad for a couple of years when I was like 17, 18, and then I came back to Holland and I lied. I was an actor, and I'd worked abroad, and I'd worked in England, and I went to drama school in England, and some fools believed me.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. So you never actually went to theater school, or?
No, I didn't. I did some workshops and some classes here and there, but most of it I think I learned in the theatre. It's when you work with different directors, and they,
right.
You know, you get to you create characters, and you get like the luxury that you have here in Holland, like 6 or 8 weeks of rehearsal time. That's where I learned most of the time.
So it's basically by doing that you learn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think your style of acting is different from what I see from most other Dutch actors.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like a lot of Dutch actors act, not the ones who come from the soap industry, I mean the soap shows, but they act more, it seems like they act more for the stage.
Yes, they do. It's, of course, it's a problem in a small country like Holland. If you are an actor, you have to live, and traditionally it always was like that. Then people would work in a theatre and then would play next to it,
right? You
know, on film or television, because basically you cannot make a living of film work in Holland. So you have to have a base of theatre, and all the schools train you for theatre,
right?
And it's you know, however much. And you know, most of the stuff that I use in film, I learned in theatre, funnily enough. But there is an essential difference if you have to go to as an audience, or if you want the audience to come to you.
Right.
And I think it's difficult, especially if your living is bringing it to an audience, to sort of stop doing that once you're in front of a camera.
But it also seems to me that there's a very distinctive way in the way Dutch actors act. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but also, for example, the people from Belgium or Denmark, and of course Britain has very good schools, so that's maybe understandable. But
yes. It is also, I think, the nature of the nature of the beast, the nature of the Dutch. We're a country of vicars. We have an incredible need, and you notice it with everything. We have an incredible need to make ourselves heard. We have to express ourselves, and for some reason we think that we have to do that loudly. Belgians don't have that at all. They're much more introspective, and the Danes, I don't know very well, but you know, there's this whole discussion raging at the moment why the Danes can make these great television series, for instance, this great drama, and we can't.
Right.
I was talking about that with it's a sort of thing that happens. I think that I think the father of all these television series, funnily enough, is Lars Norén and the people around him, and at the time of when he went to school, and Arne Barreau was the head of the film school in Copenhagen. They sort of found this way of, because they were forced to, because it's also a small country, they had no money. They found this way upon, basically, they built everything of working fast with natural light, and they discovered with a group of people, they discovered a way of working really fast with minimal means, and something organic came out of that. And out of that they built more or less the industry that now is so big.
Also like the Dogma.
Yeah, exactly, the Dogma. Well, it was born from this model. Yeah, of course, we work with natural light because we can't afford a gaffer.
Yeah.
And then he wrote that down, because then that always become this is the sort of the thing that you have, and we have to work with it. So we turn it into the rules.
Right.
And you see that also, the way of working, sort of everything fell together. The way of working adapted to the possibility of that with digital cameras, and it sort of became very, very light, and so that industry, that way of working, started to happen there, and I think therefore you get all that, you get all those ways of working.
Right.
Belgians are very introspective, which is for film perfect. On film you don't want people who go like, you want people who go, it makes you want to investigate what happens. It makes you want to go there.
Right, and not just technique, because on the stage, if you want to be heard, you need to talk loudly, but in film you can act very subtle. For example, I think Christopher Nolan said that when he was making Insomnia with Al Pacino, he often didn't see what he did, and then Pacino told him, look at the rushes and then you'll see what I did, and it was just so subtle that he didn't even notice it on the set itself.
Yeah.
So you started in Holland, and then you made at a certain point this movie Total Loss.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this was also screened in, I think, Santa Barbara, where Spielberg saw it.
No, that was at the AFI. It was before Santa Barbara. It was both selected for the AFI and Santa Barbara, and the AFI was first. Yeah, it was first. Yeah, he saw that there. It's I did it with Dana Nechushtan. I played the Karsvaasa, who was sort of my mentor, who taught me most about there is to learn about acting.
Right.
He had written it a couple of years before that for two other guys and me, and we played it in the theatre for about 90 or 100 shows. And then I did something else with Dana, and I told her, "Oh, you should read it. It's such a great play." And then a few years later, Marco van Geffer turned it into a screenplay, and Dana filmed it. And that thing didn't do very well here in Holland, but became quite a hit abroad, and was selected there. Yeah.
But how strange is it then to hear that Spielberg saw it? And I think I once read that he reminded you of Robert Shaw, because of course you have a physical resemblance to him, and that's how you were in the running for Minority Report, right?
Yes, yeah.
But then that fell through?
Yes.
And then but it also gave you sort of your international start, or
yeah, absolutely.
Is that
no,
okay?
Absolutely. I mean, once that town. I mean, he's one of the gods, Spielberg. I mean, once he gets interested, the whole of the city. It's with everything in art. There's always a couple of people that sort of make it. That sort of. And if Spielberg is interested in you, the whole rest of the town goes, what's happening? Yeah, it. And they're incredibly hungry for people there. It's you know, it's pretty rare to have fascinating anything. Cameraman, actors, writers. You know, it's they're always looking for originality, and they have throughout the century or so that Hollywood's been running.
Right.
And they look for it everywhere. They look for it. You know, from Australia has a big hunger. England, Europe.
But on the flip side, how small is the percentage of people, first of all, who actually get to work as an actor, and then second, who get to be recognized or picked by Spielberg?
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's tiny. It's it's funny. I wasn't aware of that at all. I mean, I remember I went there on the I didn't want to go at all. I was actually right at the point where I wanted to quit acting before that, because I thought it was so stupid. Right. There was an interview in Face magazine where Marlon Brando, who was still alive then, he said, acting is the expression of a neurotic impulse. It's a bum's life. Quitting acting, that's a sign of maturity. And somebody had printed that on a T-shirt for me, and I sort of wore that proudly. And around that time, I wanted to stop. I thought it was completely ridiculous, and I hadn't worked for about a year. I had a bit of a sort of drug past in which I sort of popped like loads of ecstasy, because it was at the end of the 80s and 90s, and I smoked an incredible amount of weed. And I quit that, and then I thought, oh, I also have to quit acting too, because it's all ridiculous.
Right.
And then after about a year, people around me said, yeah, but it's your job, it's what you do. Maybe you should do it. And then a friend of mine, a casting director, was casting an American film and asked me to help out because she knew my English was okay. And through her, I met this American casting director at the same time when Total Loss went out in America, or went to the AFI. And she said, oh, you have to come to America, because you can only come to Hollywood on the back of a movie. That's the only way how you can do it.
Right.
And I was like, it's really sweet of you to say that, but I'm not interested in you know, if I wanted to do anything, I wanted a steady contract with a theatre company or something. And but then all the people around me said, "Oh, go and figure it out. Go and have a look." And so I went, and I got this agent, and he said, "Oh, you should come here for a few months just to see." And I was like, "Oh my God, I hated LA. I thought it was such. I mean, it's quite a difficult city in the fact that it hasn't got a center, and you have to get to know people to really sort of survive there." And I was there for a couple of weeks, and I hated it. I really didn't want to go back. And but then through a whole bunch of circumstances, it happened that I went back anyway. And you know, I went on 2 auditions, one for Joel Schumacher and one with Steven Spielberg. So it's just an audition with a casting director, and then both casting directors phoned back that both Schumacher and Spielberg wanted to meet me, and so I went to meet them, and then they both offered me parts in their movies, and I was like, oh, well, that's apparently how it goes here.
Right.
You know, I was completely unaware that, you know, there were millions of people being waiters and stuff who wanted to. I thought, well, this is obviously how it goes. I'd never quite realized how remarkable that was. So
Total Loss basically was your ticket into the industry.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, funnily enough, was also my first film. It was I'd never I'd worked in theatre, and I'd done some tiny little bit parts in film before, but I mean, it was my first movie, so it's kind of weird.
Yeah. And then a couple of years later, you did Beyond Borders by Martin Campbell, of course, who did the amazing Casino Royale later on.
Yes.
I remember seeing that movie on VHS at the time, and or DVD, and thinking, who's this threatening guy? Because he's, you know, your part is it's not one of the lead parts, but it's one of that you remember the most. And then I found out, oh, he's Yorick, he's Dutch, and I thought, oh, I should better pay attention to him and figure out what he does. But I think the movie I just saw recently plays in Chechnya, Africa, Cambodia, London. But were you ever in any one of those places, or was it shot in Canada?
Yeah, part of it was shot in Canada, and the Ethiopia part was shot in Namibia, and Cambodia we shot in Thailand, and London we also did in Canada, and Chechnya we also did in Canada. But it was like it was like a dream. It's you know, because it's a great. I mean, here in Holland, if you work for a movie like movies like that are not even made. But say, you know, they hire you for a couple of days and you do that, and in America they more or less are forced to hire you for the whole thing, because otherwise you could just go and do something else.
Right.
So I was like, you know, they're a little pet toy, you know, and I was very excited because it was my first Hollywood film. I mean, with Angelina Jolie. I mean, that was like, you know, it doesn't get more iconic than that, you know. I mean, here I was sort of making like dumb shit for Dutch television sometimes, and some plays now and again, and suddenly working with Angelina Jolie, that was like the biggest thing in the world, and it was unbelievable, because what happens if you're on a set like that, a traveling set, is that only the keys travel. So you most of the time you have your DP and maybe one or two of his assistants, and the first and the second AD. Most of the time the whole AD assistant director group. So that it's a relatively small group, and then everything else you do with locals. So it's like a little circus that starts traveling for like, I think we shot it in about 4 months, I think, and you know, and I mean, I was hardly ever needed, so I mean, I was like the pet of the company, and I really got along with everybody. It was really, I mean, it was one of the nicest shoots that I've been on. You know, you travel the world, and you hardly have to work. It was like, you know, and with all these famous. It was. I thought, like, oh my God, this is as good as it gets. And
Clive Owen, what was it like to work with him?
He's the greatest guy. He was just about to start. He had done that croupier that sort of fixed him internationally, and this was just about to his sort of first international breakthrough. It's and he's a super nice guy. Really, it's a very sweet man.
Yeah, he sort of. I don't know what he's like in real life, but it looks like there's no air about him.
He's pretty much what you see is what you get. It's,
right.
Yeah.
And then a couple of years later, or in 2004, you did the Chronicles of Riddick, or at least it came out around the time.
Yeah.
And that was shot in Canada, I think.
Yes. Yeah, in Vancouver.
Yeah, but that's a different thing entirely, because it's on sound stages and
yeah. It was and an unbelievable amount of green screen, blue screen, you know. But I mean, it's, you know, I grew up when I was like 6, 7. I mean, the thing that I grew up with was Star Trek.
Right.
You know, the really very old, very with the wobbly sets, and I remember with tape recorders making like endless Star Trek episodes with neighbor kids and stuff. So to be in a sci-fi movie was like, and then so big.
Right.
And there is this weird thing about European actors that's. You know, because we do work in theatre, they immediately have a sort of strange kind of respect for you. They have a kind of they feel like that you have something that they don't have.
You're more exotic, or
Yeah, and they always think that you do all these Shakespeare and stuff. They have tremendous respect for them, and so it was great fun to do. It was that also. I mean, filming is really. I mean, maybe a few exceptions here and there, but on the whole, it can be a great. It's a giant bunch of fun. I mean, Riddick was also really. It was summer. It was in Vancouver. Vancouver is beautiful. On a studio set is really nice because you have this. You know, you're all there together. There's this big on this parking lot. You have all these trailers, and there's like a little sort of restaurant out in the sun. You sit there talking, and then you go in and you act a little, and.
Right.
And of course there's the stress of making it, but in that way it's I don't know, it was very nice. It was very good.
But the green screen acting, that element, was that the first time that you encountered?
Yeah.
And how do you go about adapting your own technique to something like that?
Well, you try to focus as much as you can on people, because that's always what that's what feeds everything. Is other people. It's the most important thing, and so even if there's a planet on fire right behind you, it's what you do with other people that is interesting. It's wherever you do whatever you do, that the interaction between humans is what makes acting.
And your imagination, of course. I mean, if you're talking to a tennis ball in front of a green screen, it must be difficult to imagine that you're looking out at a giant vista or something. Or
yes, it is. But you try to. I mean, for instance, you try to be constantly aware of the others, how the others react. Because I think even in real life, you're with a couple of friends and there's a giant fire coming with an incredible speed towards you. You look at those other friends, what the fuck are you going to do? It's that's what's interesting. If I go like, oh my god, it's a giant fire, it's not as interesting as oh my god, what are we going to do? That's always more interesting than whatever happens.
Okay, and your technique itself, are you a method actor, or do you, like Anthony Hopkins, read the script 250 times and say, okay, that's it?
I doubt very much whether Anthony Hopkins reads it 250 times.
But are you able to leave it alone when you go home, or do you have to stay in character? Or?
Sorry, say that one more.
Do you have to stay in character the whole time?
No way. No. And at the same time, yes, it's kind of it is kind of weird, but especially when you do film, my experience is, but I have to say, I do not work that I try not to work too much.
Right.
Is that you sort of grow into it. You grow into characters, partly of what a script gives you and what a character demands of you, but ultimately you have to merge with a role. If you merge, it means that your shit comes with it. It is also what makes characters human. Right. And if you and it's kind of essential also in anybody's life, I think, to grow, to move, to evolve, yeah, and so the two of them come together. I'm like, it's.
But do you have difficulty letting go of a character, or is that not a problem at all?
No. The beauty of it is that it sort of becomes part of you. You have to find, like for instance in Dragon Tattoo. you know, your initial reaction is like, I mean, I'm not like that.
Yeah.
Subconsciously, you even want to play, I'm not like that.
Right.
But it's, you know, it's completely ridiculous, because what you want ultimately is that people believe that you are that.
Yeah.
It's again, that Karl said, if you have to play Hitler, you better believe that you can gas 6 million people.
Right.
And we, of course, we're all gonna say like, oh my God, I can't do that. I can't find, you know, I could never kill 6 million people.
Right.
Or I could never rape, or I could never, but it happens, you know. Mankind does, and there's millions of examples in history where perfectly normal societies like the former Yugoslavia or Cambodia, where people suddenly get into the most horrendous violence towards each other.
Right.
It's so you know that it's a human thing, that you know that it has to be somewhere. And that of course the big bridge in those cases is to take, is that you have to believe that could also be you.
Yeah, like the Joker says in the interrogation scene in Dark Knight, when he tells Batman that they're not all that different, and these normal people, as he says, when the facade falls away, for example, you could be chopped up by the local butcher, or maybe that's a bad example.
Yeah, but no, but it's true. It is true. It's that's why the Joker is such an incredibly great character. It's what Heath Ledger did with it, but he could do with it because it has such a basis of truth in it, you know, and that of course is. You know, you have to find that. You have to, you know, and as Björman, for instance, you have to be able to say, but just look at that bitch. You know, she trounces into my office, and it's just, she damn well deserves to be punished. You have to find a way to get there.
Your motivation for your character to do something. Or
yeah. It's and then, you know, I mean, once you get there, that's for me always the big thing. The big thing is to get there. Once I think like, okay, this could be me, then you don't have to do that much anymore. Then you can go to the Anthony Hopkins School of Acting and just you know, say your lines. Okay.
In 2005, you starred in a movie that came out called The New World with Terrence Malick. Did you ever fear that you would maybe end up like Adrien Brody in The Thin Red Line?
Yeah, we all did. It's we were shooting. We were on the place where it happened in the original Jamestown, and we were all staying in a beautiful hotel, probably 15 kilometers away from there, and so we would all drive back, and we'd all sit in that van at the end of the day, and you know, you'd sit there and Ben Mendelsohn, who's a great friend of mine, he'd look at Colin and go like, Brody, mate. You saw Colin got you know, we all, and poor Mendelsohn was the one that actually hardly made it in the film. It's but we constantly had that, and we knew that could happen, and it's one of the tragedies of being an actor in a Malick movie.
Yes, but how did you end up in a Terrence Malick movie? I mean, he didn't do a lot. I mean, he wrote screenplays, but I think the Days of Heaven was 78.
Yeah. And
then Thin Red Line was 97 or something. Then he did, of course, The New World, and now he's very prolific. He has 3 movies coming out or preparing. How did you end up there? Do you have to audition for, or?
I auditioned for it. Most of the time, if they want me to audition, I put myself on tape, because I'm not there that often. But I had already, I knew Andrew Dominic, who knew him very well.
Okay.
And so we were already aware of each other's existence. And then the casting director, as the head of casting of Sony, she knew me quite well, and so they asked me to put myself on tape for this thing, and I auditioned initially for the part that what was his name? David Thewlis was playing.
Right.
And so we shot it somewhere in a port in Amsterdam. I always shoot it with my best friend, and so we took a little video camera and we went somewhere in the port, and it was pissing down with rain, and so we went like, oh, we have to do this quickly because so I stood there in my motorbike jacket doing this sort of speech, and FedExed it to America, and a couple of days later they phoned me and asked if I wanted to play not Wingfield but Argyle, and I was like, yeah, sure, great. It's and I think that Days of Heaven is one of the most beautiful films in the world. It's I'd seen Badlands before, but I didn't quite appreciate that till later. But Days of Heaven was such a masterpiece.
But then is it a case that you will just think, I'm in a Terrence Malick movie, I don't care if I have to be this guy or how big the part is, or is it just the fact that you want to be working with the man who made Badlands?
Yeah. That was and it wasn't it yeah, no, absolutely, and it was and we all didn't know. I think when we started, I think there was a script of like 280 pages. It was like enormous, and it was cut, and parts were thrown away and then reused, and he would write whole monologues. And by the end of the day, he goes, "Oh, Yorick, could you do this tomorrow?" And then you go like, okay. And then you would learn this whole monologue, and then you'd never hear of it again. Or suddenly you go like, "Oh, Yorick, that speech that I wrote for you like 3 weeks ago. Do you still remember that? Could you do that?" And then that's how it went. It was a very, very strange way. It was around the same time as I did the Peter Greenaway, and they were like completely different ways of working than it was so, they just took like little bits and pieces of their script, and then they would do it again when the light was different, or they would throw away like 12 scenes just to get one. It was a whole different way of working, and it was a very difficult shoot, because it was extremely hot and humid, and it was many of us were in a pretty dark place while we shot it, but still it's one of the great experiences of my career.
I can understand, but his images are always very poetic, but is his set chaotic in the sense that if he sees something that he wants to capture, that he suddenly will drop everything just to chase the butterfly?
I mean, poetry comes from chaos. I think chaos or emptiness. All the great directors that I worked with, the one thing that they have in common is that they understand that things need to be born, that you cannot say go and stand there and do this because it'll be contrived and uninteresting to watch. It's Fincher, Malick, Greenaway. They're almost like kids, as curious what is going to happen.
Right.
As it's not like, oh, we're going to do it like this. You know, Fincher, for instance, he's so aesthetic and he really wants to have control. He would prefer to be able to say, oh, and then do that and that and that and then look there and that and that. But he knows he can't do that. He knows that it will die. So he will, for instance, just do it 150 times so that by coincidence somebody will do what he had thought of, or make sure that at least it's alive. Greenaway will only do one take because he thinks it's whatever happens is whatever happens. You know, but you'll see that with all the great directors. I have no idea what you were asking.
Well, I sort of lost my train of thought as well.
Oh yeah, the chaos on the set
right,
of Malick. Yeah, and so it is always, and he works very much like that. Also, the whole the premise of the New World was to, and it was quite radical then. You had that whole movement of, I mean, I don't think ever before there was like a handheld costume film. It was kind of a strange concept to make. It was like almost like a how do you call that? Like a sort of fly on the wall kind of documentary feel he wanted to have to get into the reality of those people.
So no storyboarding or.
Oh God, no. Oh God, no, not at all. And it was like that. It was. I mean, we were acting. I remember there's one moment. There's this big speech by Christopher Plummer where he would sort of speak to the settlers, and so he had this giant speech, and it went something like. Here we are in America's finest hour, and we've settled here on this. And he started, and here we are again in America's greatest hour, and the director is fucked off again. It literally, Chibo, Emmanuel Lubinski, the cameraman, would be filming, and Malick would see from the corner of his eye that the sun was touching the reed. And there was a little wind going through it, and he would just pull Emmanuel Lubinski towards the reed, and you would literally not see him for the next 2 days, and we would show up and he wouldn't be there because he would be at the reed, and then suddenly think, oh my God, he would go, wow, Koryanka, it's really, could you do some handstands here through the reed? And so then he'd be off doing that. It's
so you constantly had to be on your toes because you didn't know.
Yeah, but you have to have that everywhere, of course. But it was a whole different way of doing things.
Quite opposite, I think, to the Dutch production Winter and Wartime, which you did a couple of years later, with Martin Koolhoven. What was that experience like?
Well, funnily enough, it's not so much opposite because. Martin is and he's a rarity with that in Holland. And the funny thing is, I was talking about it with Martijn, and he did it with him too. Martin knows that. Martin also is one of the few people, because by nature, directors become directors because they want to control everything. Right. It's they want to be. You know, it's godlike, creating your own world, and you want to be in control of everything, and to then learn. That it's not about that. It's a very, very few. It's you know, that to know that you have to rely on the creativity of the writer, of the DP, of the actor, you know, and that your strength is on bringing that together, and then it's what I just said. It's like what Fincher had, you know, that he's sort of looking like a little kid, as if he doesn't know what's going to happen, and Koolhoven is exactly the same. He is like, You know, he sees what happens. It's I was talking about it the other day with Martijn at the end of Oorlogswinter. There's a scene where he sort of swings this sound-making thing around, and at one of the Q&As, Martijn was asked why he decided to have Martijn laugh so broadly there, and he said, well, you know, I gave that thing to Martijn, and I said to him, like, oh, this is the war, and you know what has happened, but you're also just a kid,
right?
And then he went action, you know, and so it was, as you know, interesting to see what Martijn would do there, and that's exactly the beauty of it, because if you look back at that scene, you see him making that decision. You see him wondering about all these things. You see him wondering about, you know, that his father got shot, but also that he's a kid, and that and suddenly he sort of gets it, and he gets the thing of the sound it makes, and he breaks in this smile. There's nothing contrived, nothing directed about it. It exists there and then, and that's, I think, where every single one of them is looking for. That's also the joy of playing. Yeah. You know, the joy of playing is to you know, to literally find things out while acting,
right?
And that's but it's also the most you know, it's fucking risky to you know, when a director goes action and you have no idea what's going to happen,
right?
It's
because also in the last scene that you just described, it seems like Martijn's character is Michiel is reclaiming some of his innocence or his feeling as a child, because of all these horrific experiences that he's encountered during the war, and you sort of grow up, I can imagine, too fast, but then this also makes him more or I mean less two-dimensional.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and then of course you have the choice as the director to use that, because your power of course lies in the editing room, and you sort of want to, the more you get, the more you have to work with. But say if you want something opposite to happen too, the only thing that you can do is sort of create circumstances in which an actor can get there, and then pick later, because of course you have that might. Right.
So and then later on in 2010, the movie The Way came out by Emilio Estevez, which I saw last night, and I really enjoyed it. And you actually
you didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed making it. Trust me.
I bet. But you play a Dutch character who goes on this pilgrimage in Spain, and whereas I normally think of you having a pretty flawless accent, in the sense that when I hear you talk, I believe you're either British or American, or not, at least not Dutch. But in this character Joost, he's from Amsterdam, and he talks a bit like you think that most Dutch people talk English. Was that a deliberate choice? Do you?
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. It's actually based on a Dutch guy that Emilio knows. I think a winemaker in California. And so we talked like a lot about the character, but then you also know, you know, and that's, you know, we were talking about the different ways of acting before. Like a character like this, you don't, you know, the Brits have a total different way of making characters, just because of their history, because of Shakespeare, basically. That's what it is. So they, you know, it's classic. The differences are that Americans work from the inside out, and Brits work from the outside in, and a character like Joost, when I read that script for the first time, I was shooting in Hungary on a Dutch television series, and it was just so much fun, because you know the function that he has. It's like the counter to Martin. You know, the film starts as a kind of pretty bleak and depressing story, and then Joost is like a truck driving through a china shop, but everybody sort of goes like, oh god, yeah, here it's very sad, and the man goes and comes to collect it, and then you get this fucking idiot who, with absolutely no sense of what's going on, walks through that, so you know already, you know your function before you know anything of the character really. And the fact was also, it was very funny because that movie, and I think that Emilio agrees, maybe, I hope, was just made a year too early. It was he had started writing it, and he had a first draft, and they went on a recce. They went to investigate the scene in Spain, and they met with his Spanish producer, and they went like, let's make it. Let's shoot in October, and this was in March.
Right.
And so Emilio didn't know what happened to him. It's funny because he has a sort of larger following here as a director in Europe than he has in America. And so basically, I think from the first draft of the script to shooting, I think it was less than a year. And but what basically happened is that it wasn't finished. It wasn't, the characters hadn't developed enough. And our great luck was that we shot chronologically.
Right.
So you can develop your characters along the road. So we started in the Pyrenees, and we slowly progressed towards the Atlantic, and that's the only way that you can form a character while walking, and then all kind of things happen. So the walking, the filming, it all becomes part of the process of developing a character. It's very funny. So this guy goes on a trek to lose weight. That's what you initially think, and then because of of course, I mean, I have a love of food. And it was Spain. It was beautiful. It was beautiful weather. The Spanish filmmaking, I'm absolutely convinced, is like a hobby that they do in between meals. And we would walk through the Pyrenees, like in completely deserted rocks and hills and fog, and we'd be filming, and we'd just go over the next hill, and suddenly the catering camp is there in the middle of a mountain, a field. There's like tables, there's like 5 different dishes, fish and lamb, and so that's all that I did on that shoot. I ate, and so I became fatter and fatter through the movie, and that's of course a great thing if you have a character that's trying to lose weight, and throughout the movie he gets fatter and fatter, and you realize that there's a hell of a lot more going on. Right. And you find out more about a character while walking, and then all, like for instance at the with the way at the end, it all becomes such an organic group, and things happen, and and the interactions between working with Martin was like, oh man, it was one of the greatest things on this planet, because he's such a generous man in everything. He gives and he gives, and anecdotes. I mean, did you see West Wing? He plays there a president who has all these who has these endless anecdotes. That's him. He has endless stories about great actors that he worked with, about James Dean, about the Kennedys he knew, about Francis Ford Coppola, about Marlon Brando. You just sit there and you go, ah. And so it became such an organic thing that we all moved and found out things about our character, and so we stand there. At one point we come to the city, to the big scene in the cathedral,
Right.
and then there's a scene behind a desk where we have our passport stamped, and they ask why you're doing that, and Emilio went like, well, just improvise a bit, have a bit of a dialogue. I probably won't use the dialogue. I'll probably put music under it, and I stand there, and this whole story, and I really do have no idea where it comes from. That my wife doesn't want to have sex with me anymore, and that suddenly becomes those things. That suddenly becomes a backstory of that character. Suddenly he keeps that dialogue of all of us, and these stories come out, and you can only do that if you shoot like that, if you shoot chronologically, and of course, because it's such a community, you're all there on the road. I mean, the Sheen family, his wife was there, his sister was there, his grandson was there, Emilio's son, and it was this sort of love project, and it was kind of risky, because they put in some of their own money. I think they took out a mortgage on their house and stuff, and for like the longest time after it was finished, they didn't know it would get a distribution deal in America, and then it suddenly did, and it did unbelievably well, and on DVD it did even beyond anyone's wildest dreams. It was like it came out at the same time as The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and it was in competition with The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which was like a $100 million movie towards a $3 million movie. It was the weirdest thing, and they're making. I think there's going to be a second part of it. Away.
Okay, and that was also a nice segue into The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, because Deborah, who also plays one of the lead characters in the way, she starred with Michael Douglas in The Game by David Fincher.
Yeah.
So The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, how did that happen? Did you audition, or does Fincher give you a call? Or
yeah, no, I auditioned for that too, and that all goes really secretive. My agent phoned me and said, we would like to put yourself on tape, but we have no idea what for. I was like, what? And because normally I don't even audition if I don't have the script, because I mean it's disrespectful you need something to know about a character if you want to play. And so I went to my agent. That's fucking bullshit, man. I mean, what do you want? And he went like, well, they have this scene, and they would like you to put on tape. And he said, I can tell you that I think it's David Fincher, but I'm not even sure. And if it is David Fincher, it's probably a Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, because it was known that he had the rights for that. But he said, I'm not even sure. And I read this, and they had sent me a scene, and I did not understand a thing of the scene. It was the most ridiculous scene that I've ever seen. I thought, like, how can you on earth do this? And I was like, why? And
which scene was it?
I'll tell you in a second. So I then made it with Declaret, another in America working actress, and a friend of mine, and Jonas Sachs, a phenomenal Dutch DP, and we went like, okay, let's do it. Let's just. They read the scene too, and they also had no idea, and so I went like, okay, let's just do a take, and then also to get rid of my agent whining. So Tekla lay on bed in my bedroom, and Jonas stuck himself between the bed and my heater, and I had learned the lines, and I had no idea what it was about. I really had no idea what it was about, and so we shot it in a take. And then I said, well, shall we do another take? And then we did another take, and I thought, well, it's crap. Let's forget about it and go home and do something else. And so we did. And then the next day, I thought, can I send it to my agent, or is it too bad? And I looked at it, and I suddenly saw the workings of that scene, funnily enough. And then again, it works because you have no preconceived idea.
Right.
It's because you try to find out what the fuck you're saying. So I send it off to my agent, and the next day Fincher said, I want him. And it was a scene from, oh my god, I forgot the title, Gene Hackman in a Francis Ford Coppola movie. Now you can come out with your knowledge. Where Gene Hackman plays a sound recordist and
the conversation.
The conversation.
Right.
It was the scene between Gene Hackman and the girl. He comes into the apartment of the girl, and the girl lies in bed.
Right.
And I saw it later because I hadn't seen the conversation, and that's why I didn't recognize it. And I saw it later, and it is like a fucking weird scene. I mean, those two, you think like, what the fuck is going on? It's she wants to ask him some questions, he doesn't really want to talk about it. It's this really slow, languishing scene, and you wonder, and he saw that, and then he went like, that's our Mr. Bjorman.
So his way of working is Stanley Kubrick also did a lot of takes. He was very famous for that, and David Fincher as well. And I think it was on the commentary track for Social Network that he or some of the cast explained that after doing something for a ridiculous amount of times, like 80 times or so, you first you start very fresh, and then you start to get tired, and then you start forgetting things, and then it's different than you would ever approach it before.
There's a great thing on YouTube which I saw when the Social Network came out, and I had just found out that I was going to do this film, and it's right up my alley. That's why I really enjoyed working with Fincher, and I know other actors hate working with Fincher. He said, because they always ask him about the amount of takes, he said most of the time actors get on set with a preconceived idea of what they're going to do.
Right.
He said, I'll do as many takes until they give up that preconceived idea.
Right.
And which is my cup of tea, because I prefer not to come on set with a preconceived idea. We spoke endlessly, I think for 3 months, about Bjorman and about the character, and he's very open. He's very open for creative input. He's funnily enough, he's almost like a technician. Fincher. He's very much interested in the detail of shots and of the telling of a story on a technical way, but when it comes to either the writing or the acting, he goes back. He just goes like, you go like, oh, we have this and this idea. I remember we met with Rooney and Fincher and Steve Zalian, the writer, in somewhere in December in London, and we started shooting, I think, our scenes in March in LA, and they had shot a couple of exteriors in Sweden and flew back through London, arranged to meet me, and then flew back to LA. And we sat there talking about it, and so there were like Rooney's ideas and my ideas and Fincher's ideas, and Steve Zalian would all write them down, and then would come back with adapted scenes. He would never, he's not a director. Most directors, they go like, oh, we'll change that and we'll change that and we'll change that. Fincher will never do something like that by himself. He has an incredible respect for those other creative disciplines. Funnily enough, I was really surprised by that, and so you keep talking about it. You keep talking about the character, and initially he was thinking that it was like a sort of used car salesman, Bjorman, and so we talked about it a lot, and I thought maybe it's more, you know, like the what you classically have in social democratic institutions in Europe is like those the man, I don't even know how to express it in English, the geitenwolle sokken, the sort of caring the caring man, that even things can sort of come from that even evil can come from a strange way of caring, and we talked about it for months, and then Fincher is the and the meticulousness of a character lies within that kind of preparation, in the preparation of character, and so you build and you build and you build on that, but on the moment you start acting, you can't think of anything, and it's that again. That's what I find exceptionally pleasant way of working.
Right.
You know, that you just come into this room and you sit there behind the desk and you see that girl sitting there, and you go and you know, you go like, okay, so this is it. It's me and that girl is acting like a bitch, and I need to be strict to deal with that. And so I think like that first scene, the scene in the office. I think we had planned like 2 days for it, and we were done before lunch, and everybody was like, and I was like, you know, because I mean I expected 90, 100 takes,
right,
and it was like 6, 7 takes and they changed position.
Yeah.
And I thought, it's so bloody weird that they do that.
Yeah.
And you know, and then, but then, you know, so I went like, I thought you were doing like 60, 70 takes, and he went like, I got it, and I was like, oh, okay. And then later that afternoon we started working on the scene in the elevator, and then we took 2 days for that.
Right.
You know, and then he shoots like he gets every wall out of that elevator except for the bottom. You know, just because he can, and because he wants to see things and find out things and stuff. But I mean, if he gets what he wants, and you know, again back to that same organic kind of feeling, then he has it.
But it also makes sense if you take, for example, maybe the production of a movie, just the run up from the first spark until it actually comes out, somewhat can take 2 years.
Yeah.
Why would you waste time? I mean, why would you waste the opportunity to not do as many takes as you want? Because that's the whole moment that's been leading up to it.
Well, of course, that's only possible if you are Fincher.
Right.
You know, because I mean, if Koolhoven would say, I'm going to do 100 takes from each shot in Oorlogswinter, he'd be murdered.
Right.
It's you can only do that with because you're Fincher, and because you can, you know, I mean, I think we took like 114 days to shoot The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. If it had been shot here in Holland, it probably would have done in 24 or 26 days. Even on a big budget in America, you could probably bring a film like that without special effects, you could probably bring it in 60, 70 days. And he takes 110. And, you know, and he can do that.
Yeah.
And he can make what he wants because he's Fincher. And still he thinks that he hates it. He hates filming. He goes, we were talking at one point, and he goes like, I love all the pre-production, I love the casting and the working with the production designer, but once you start filming, it's one giant compromise. Okay. Now this is, I think, the man who's the least compromised director on the planet. It's he gets whatever he wants. It seems, but it's always then limited. You can never go as far as he would want.
Okay. I think this would be a good note to end on, because we've almost been talking for an hour. Cool. And I just have 1 minute left on my card, so 47 Ronin, what can you tell us about that?
I think it's going to be spectacular, funnily enough. It's Carl Ringe, the director, is a genius, and that's also what makes probably the relationship with the studio difficult, because it's always genius and business. They need each other. I did another short film with him since. I'm extremely curious. I have the feeling it's going to be a spectacular art house movie of $200 million.
That sounds very promising. Thank you, Yorick, for doing this, and
Welcome,
thanks a lot.
Okay.